All right, today we're going to be talking about ancient Greek philosophers. And when we're talking about most of these philosophers, we are talking about people that would have done most of their living and teaching in the city of Athens, all within relatively the same period of time of each other. Most of these philosophers would have known who each other were or would have known people that knew them if they had lived a little bit before them. But these are all relatively in the same period of time. And as we're going to see, a lot of their ideas are way ahead of their time. This is all happening around 300 and 400 BC. So we are talking almost 2,500 years ago. So basically, philosophy. Philosophers are people who believe that their knowledge and wisdom could be used to understand the world around them. So we're looking at people that are starting to think about stuff that's around them without just blaming the gods. This is a huge deal for ancient Greece and the whole world. These philosophers started to question why for everything. If we're saying that humans have fire because this guy Prometheus went up to Olympus and stole it, philosophers would say, well, why? How does that work? That doesn't make sense. There has to be another reason. Why do we have fire? What's the real reason? They're going to start looking at a lot of these things. They're looking at things in nature. They're looking at mathematical things to explain the world around them, astronomy, understanding the meaning of justice and courage and how that should be, the world should be lived like that, and generally just understanding the way people think. So this is a major turn for ancient Greece in the world, where you have a dedicated group of people who try to explain things using science and other explanations, and not just saying, oh, the gods did it. So the first philosopher we're going to talk about is a guy named Thales. He's known for his work in astronomy, geometry, and study in nature. So this guy was all over the place. He's studying a bunch of different things. He was able to successfully predict a solar eclipse, which might not seem like a big deal to us today, but by studying the movement of planets in the sky, this guy was able to figure out when there would be a solar eclipse. He believed that water was the basic material of all the world and that all things are made of water. And if you think about it, a lot of things do contain water. So he's on the right track with this. Our next philosopher is a guy named Democritus. I guess he's known as the laughing philosopher due to the importance that he put on cheerfulness. So he's more looking at a way you should live your life, and it's look on the bright side. Be cheerful, be happy. No, don't live your life being down. He's the first one to really start studying the stars and believe that there may be life in these other systems other than just on our planet, which again, really big deal for the time. To us, it's kind of, you either believe it or you don't. It's not a new idea. Ancient Greece is a very new idea. Democritus did a lot of study with science. He suggested that all things in the world, living beings included, were made from very small particles. So he thought that we were all made up of smaller pieces. He called these small particles atoms. And if you think about it, this is around 300 BC. This guy comes up with the idea for atoms. So most of our technology today a lot of our advanced technology today draws from work with atoms. And this is the guy who came up with it, named the term. Now, he probably didn't understand exactly how small these would be, but he's on the right track. All right, now we're getting to the big three. There's three major ones. The first one is Socrates. Chronologically, he comes before the next two. He's known as the father of modern philosophy. So the first two guys, Thales, Democritus, a lot of what they did would have been modeled after what Socrates did. He's the first big thinker that ancient Greece sees. He focuses on intellectual philosophy rather than physical philosophy. So he's not really looking at the world around him. He's looking at human actions. So two examples would be, what is true wisdom? And he might discuss that with somebody. Who is truly wise? He would discuss that with people. He'd invite people to take part in discussions with him because that's how he believed you found answers to these things. He lived in Athens, and the youth of Athens loved him. They absolutely loved him. And what he did was he convinced many of them to kind of shake off their normal life where they go get a job and kind of encourage them to focus on learn about the world around them. So he basically took this group of youths and tried to basically turn them into philosophers in training. So he taught his students to think for themselves, no longer blindly believe elders in society. So if your elders say, oh, you better make sure you make sacrifices to Zeus, he's teaching them, maybe you should think that there's something else out there, or another explanation for why things are the way they are. And the biggest thing was he taught his students to not believe in superstition and the gods. He didn't believe in social classes. He thought everybody was completely equal in their place in the world. He would speak to a king the same way he spoke to a slave. He was not shy about that belief. So clearly, if he's teaching the youth to not blindly follow their elders and to disobey and disbelieve the gods, and he's saying that this elite group is the same as the slaves, he's going to really annoy a lot of people. And that's never a good idea, especially in the ancient world when you're annoying people that are more powerful than you, because usually they can make bad things happen to you. And this is what winds up happening. Socrates is arrested and put on trial for corrupting the youth of Athens. And surprise, surprise, he's found guilty. Now, they give him every opportunity that they can to get him to leave Athens. They basically tell him, if you leave, you're going to be found guilty, but we're not going to kill you. If you stay, you're going to be found guilty and we will kill you. He believes that you have to follow the law, and he stays. They force him to drink hemlock, which is a poison, and he dies. But one of his students, a guy named Plato, was kind of next in line. He's born into an elite class. He's expected to follow a political career. And then this guy named Socrates comes around and basically says, don't blindly believe what everybody tells you. Don't do what your elders think you should do. Do what you think you should do. So he decides to not do what his parents want. And he becomes one of Socrates' students. He's his best student. And he does something that Socrates never does. He writes. And the first thing he writes is an accurate history of Socrates and a lot of the things Socrates taught. So we actually have no writings, no literature from Socrates himself, because he didn't believe in writing things down. Plato did this. So most of what we know about Socrates is because of Plato. He wrote a lot of plays, specifically about Socrates' life, trial, his death, how teaching of laws, and how you should obey the law even if you disagree with it. And one of the more important things he does is he starts an academy in Athens that is specifically for training this type of philosophical teaching. Another big thing he did was wrote a book called The Republic. And what the book does is it considered what the world would look like if it was ruled by these educated people who are always striving towards knowledge and doing what they think is right. So that book winds up being kind of a lot of inspiration for a government in Rome called the Republic, which again is based on people that are educated and who do what they think is right. We'll talk more about that when we get to ancient Rome. The last philosopher's name is Aristotle. Chronologically of the three, he's the last, and he's known for his scientific examination of human knowledge. So again, he's looking at knowledge. If he's looking at knowledge, he's kind of looking at everything. And in his pursuit for knowledge, he masters these fields of biology, politics, metaphysics, which is studying the reasoning for the world around you, agriculture, literature, botany, medicine. This guy learns everything. So he's considered an expert in everything. Some people consider him historically one of the smartest people to ever have lived. And he's probably pretty close, based on his reputation, he's probably up there. One of the big things he's super famous for is being the tutor for a person we'll talk about in the next presentation, Alexander the Great. He meets Alexander, and Alexander's a young boy. He recognizes the talent in him and becomes friends with him. And during his time with Alexander, he kind of helps Alexander make some political decisions because he becomes the leader of a area north of Greece called Macedonia. And he's seen to have a huge influence on Alexander's rule. When he is done tutoring Alexander, he starts his own school called the Lyceum. And that is our quick crash course in major Greek philosophers. Thank you very much for listening in. And our next presentation will kind of be more about this guy named Alexander the Great. Thank you.